Up next on Addicted to Gear, we're going to be helping one of our viewers that seems to be suffering from relic repulsion. So the message reads, I realize this is pretty irrational, but whenever I see a relic guitar for sale, I feel a twinge of anger. I try to tell myself that this feeling is unwanted and that people can spend their money any way they wish and live and let live and all that. But I can't help it. It just seems so phony to me, and phoniness gets under my skin like nothing else. I saw a relic for sale on Craigslist the other day, and the case was relic as well. I can understand having a guitar that feels worn in, but the case? Really? Anyway, suggestions for overcoming this affliction would be greatly appreciated. Now, Fender has been putting out relic guitars for over 20 years. And obviously, a lot of people do appreciate them because they sell. Now, it's not just amateur guitarists that appreciate relic guitars. There's a lot of very famous rock stars out there that own relic guitars in their collection. People like Billy Gibbons, well known for customizing the crap out of his guitars. Even Keith Richards, Slash. And I'm even going to go out on a limb here and say Stevie Ray Vaughan. I know that Stevie's famous for his #1 Strat, but I'm wondering how much of that is actually authentic wear and how much of that has actually been helped along the way a little bit. You know, I'm just putting it out there. I've come to appreciate good relic guitars. And I underline the word good because there's a lot of terrible, terrible relic guitars. And we're not talking about the relic guitars that you see on Craigslist where somebody takes a Squier Affinity, chips off the paint, throws it down the stairs a few times, drags it behind his dad's car and slaps some stickers on it and calls it a relic. In those cases, a perfectly good guitar has pretty much been ruined of its resale value and it looks pretty much terrible to me. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is a relic guitar that is crafted by someone who has spent countless hours perfecting the art of relicing. Either you're in the camp of liking them or not liking them. But hating them is a whole different ball of wax. So I could understand the people that want to take care of their instruments, that buy a brand new instrument with their hard-earned money and they don't want to see a scratch or a ding in it. And they just prefer to have it pristine forever. I get it. I understand that. I could appreciate that. By the same token, the people that don't like relic guitars and like shiny guitars, which is a lot more common, I would say, by the same token, do we consider people that like only shiny guitars to have a problem? That can appreciate older guitars, vintage guitars, or relic guitars? That's what we're going to talk about today. Pro relic guitars or against relic guitars. I, for one, consider myself to be in the middle category. I like brand new guitars and I like to take care of them. But I also like the look and feel of relic guitars like this one. And I can appreciate the time and the effort that goes into making one. I do believe that you can definitely enjoy a relic guitar as much as a brand new guitar. There's no reason why you shouldn't. So even though I really like my relic Telecaster and Stratocaster, I equally love guitars in my collection like my PRS, my Suhr guitar, and other guitars that I have that are not reliced. And I have no interest in relicing them. As a matter of fact, I probably would not be interested if PRS came out with a line of reliced guitars, because for me, the reason why I like PRS guitars is because of the beautiful finishes that they have. So take that away from them and I'm not interested anymore. That's just me. So now I would like to address the comments that I hear over and over again where people say that, you know, a relic guitar is a fake or you're a poser and, you know, you shouldn't waste your money, your hard-earned money on a guitar that's been thrown down the stairs. Now, we know that creating a relic guitar is a laborious process. It takes a lot of time, energy, takes a good eye. You know, you can really easily ruin the look of a relic guitar by going too far with it. And a lot of times I do see relic guitars that are just overly reliced, too much. For me, a relic guitar, ideally, less is more. And the reason I say that is because you can take a relic guitar that is lightly aged and then use it and really make it your own by putting the rest of the dings and the wear into it as you're playing it. It's just sort of like a helping hand. Some people just don't like shiny things, you know, and I understand that. Now consider this: if you buy a used guitar on the used market and the previous owner didn't really take great care of it, and there's a couple of dings in it, there's a few scratches in it, it's not pristine, is that considered a relic guitar? Are you going to be then considered a poser because you didn't put in the dings and the dents and the scratches in that guitar? You didn't buy the guitar right off the shelf in mint condition? I don't think so. I don't think most of us would consider that, would even think about that. Just an old guitar, and you happen to like it, even though it has some dings in it. You know, the poser mentality kind of doesn't hold too much water for me. Now, by the same token, say you buy a lightly aged Strat, similar to this one, and you've owned this Strat now for, say, 10 years. And maybe you bought this relic Strat used off someone else who also owned it for maybe 5 years. So the guitar is essentially over 15 years old, right? Is it still considered a fake? A lot of the dings and the scratches that are in this guitar are not fake. A lot of the checking in this guitar, for example, is not fake. A lot of the dirt on the fretboard, you know, the griminess is not fake. So when does a relic guitar stop being a fake, in your opinion? So I think part of the way somebody can get over not being able to appreciate relic guitars is possibly by trying to create a relic guitar on your own, or watching someone work on a guitar and create a relic from scratch. Now, I guarantee you, if you do this, and if you spend some time with somebody that does this, that is good at it, a professional, and you go through the process and see how much time and effort it takes, how much attention to detail it takes, how careful you have to be to get it right and to make the hardware match the body and the neck and everything like that, I guarantee you, you'll come away with a different perspective on relic guitars. So let's hear some of the very common counter arguments to relic guitars that I hear over and over again. The most common has to be, well, why don't you just buy a new guitar and play the darn thing till it's relic if you like relic guitars so much? Well, the reality is that today's guitars are very, very difficult to wear down like a vintage guitar. They're just not made to wear. They're made to last a long time. And really, when it comes to relic guitars, you know, the paint finish is super important. Now, the older guitars were made with very thin coats of paint, often nitrocellulose lacquer. Today's guitars are made mostly with polyurethane paints, which are very, very thick, very, very durable, which is not a bad thing if you want a guitar to last, right? But it's basically the equivalent of taking your guitar and dipping it into a vat of plastic, right? So it creates a very thick, hard shell around the body of the guitar. That is virtually impossible to wear out by rubbing it and playing your guitar. And even if you hit your guitar somewhere, it's not gonna really ding. It's more likely to chip, and a chunk of that will fall off your guitar, which doesn't really look good, and it doesn't really mimic the look of the vintage guitars if you're after that. So you would have to typically play a guitar with a poly finish for probably 100 years before you could even start making it look used up. So that argument goes out the window. So the second argument that I hear over and over again is, why not just simply buy a vintage guitar if you like them so much? Well, for one thing, I can't afford a vintage guitar. They're usually very scarce, hard to find in good condition, and really are very expensive. Vintage guitars also become very fragile over time. Things like the pots, the pick guards that are usually made of very fragile material tend to start cracking and deteriorating, and the tuners basically, don't work as well. A lot of little things like that end up happening to these vintage guitars, which then require repair or replacement. Which brings me to the next point. Let's say you're lucky enough to own a vintage Les Paul, and for some reason the original PAF pickup that you have in that guitar becomes faulty and is no longer working and needs to be replaced. What are you going to do? Are you going to replace that pickup with a shiny new chrome one? Or are you going to try and find something that matches the rest of the guitar? Well, more than likely you're going to have a hard time finding an authentic PAF pickup, especially one that is affordable. So you're probably going to look for one that's been reliced or aged to match the guitar. Same for the tuners. If one of the tuners becomes faulty in your Stratocaster that your grandfather left you, are you going to put a brand new shiny tuning peg on that guitar? I don't think so. I think you're going to try and get a tuning peg that matches, that's been reliced or aged. So, why is that any different? Are you now a poser because you were a hypocrite because you put in a tuner that wasn't really made in 1956 or something like that? I don't think so. So the whole argument becomes a little bit wish-wash. So if I can go back in time a little bit and talk about the point in time where Fender started to realize that there was a potential market for these road-worn or reliced instruments. Two of the people that were building guitars for them decided that they would try to build two guitars that were aged. They then put it in a collection of other guitars that they were displaying at a show. And a lot of people that walked by just assumed that those guitars were old guitars, sitting right there with the other guitars that were authentic old guitars, vintage guitars. Until they were told that, hey, this is actually a model that just came out this year. This is a brand new guitar. Of course, a lot of people were flabbergasted and said, it looked so authentic to them. And obviously there are people that really do want to have a vintage guitar but simply can't afford it. And that started the ball rolling on this whole vintage guitar relic thing. So I ask you, if you come across 3 guitars on guitar stands in front of you, 2 of them are vintage and 1 isn't, and the relicing work is done so well that it's very difficult to tell them apart. And then you play those guitars, and the vintage ones have playability issues. Maybe they're not perfect. There's, over time, they have some issues that have developed. So they don't play so well, although they look great. And then you have the Relic Stratocaster, and you pick it up and it looks old, it looks worn, looks vintage, and it plays great. And the tuners work. And nothing's falling off the guitar. If I was a vintage guitar collector and I just had a limited amount of money to spend on guitars, I'd consider getting a good quality relic guitar. Again, underlining good quality. There's so many guitars out there, and I'll say it again, that to me do not even qualify as relics. They're just ruined guitars, and that's not what we're talking here. In the hands of a craftsman who knows what they're doing, you can have a glorious instrument that is great to play, feels wonderful, feels worn in like you've been playing the guitar for years and years, like the most comfortable pair of jeans that you own. They're just, something familiar about it. And also, that very first ding in the guitar is no big deal. It's actually welcomed because now you're actually helping the guitar age and become a unique instrument that is truly your own. There's never going to be 2 guitars like that once you start playing it and digging it and just using it. Will it go out of style? I don't think so. I think as the guitar ages, the fact that it's relic will kind of just fade away. And at a certain point, people won't really care if it started its life as a relic guitar, because for all intents and purposes, the guitar has been played for years. Most of the dings are authentic. The dirt is authentic, and people won't really care whether or not the guitar started off its life as a relic or not. So going back to the initial message that I read at the top of the video, all I can say is try to embrace every instrument and appreciate it for what it is. If it's what encourages you to play and is something that you consider beautiful, that you enjoy picking up and playing every single day, who am I to tell you you're doing it wrong? I don't want my guitars to all be identical. There would be no point in that. And I do appreciate everyone for their uniqueness and what they offer in terms of just feel. Having a Telecaster in my collection, fantastic. Having a Relic Telecaster in my collection, just as fantastic. I don't see any reason for me to shun one over the other. It just doesn't logically make sense in my brain. Guys, I hope this lecture kind of talk that we're having here opens up your perspective on Relic guitars, and voice your opinion down below. Let me know what you think. If you think Relic guitars are great, if you think Relic guitars are a waste of time and money, I want to hear from you. Put your comments down below and we'll discuss this further through the comments. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I hope any of you guys that are suffering from PTSD from, Relic guitars, that you finally get over this dreadful affliction, because honestly, they're great instruments. And if you get a good one, again, I underline the word good one, if you get a good quality Relic guitar, I'm sure you'll love it for years and years to come. So if you'd like to support our channel so we can continue to grow, please consider grabbing some swag down below. You can get yourself a really cool Addicted to Gear t-shirt or other merchandise. Don't forget to check out the comment section. I often post a coupon code where you can save some money on that, and it's very much appreciated. So that's it for now, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned, keep rocking. More great stuff coming your way on Addicted to Gear.